Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's live Q&A with the wonderful and amazing Louie Del Carmen. Before we begin, I would like to invite you all to start entering in your questions in the questions field that's off to your right. Again, feel free to ask any questions you have regarding his workshop, any questions about his personal career and just life or whatever comes to mind. And I think he'll be more than happy to answer your questions. And beyond that, just remember that when we have a lot of questions coming through, make sure that you give other people a chance to ask their questions. But as of now, there's no questions yet, so anyone that has questions, please enter them in right now so that way we can have them ready to go when we start asking Louie. Beyond that, I'm going to hand Louie over control of this particular Q&A. So Louie, in a moment you'll see it pop up for you.
Okay. All right.
And just...
Yeah. Cool.
Awesome. So take it away, Louie.
All right. So welcome, everybody. And thank you for attending the Q&A. And I'm delighted to, again, to have been given the opportunity to do this workshop. There's quite a lack of storyboarding resource, especially online. So I think this is a sort of a special opportunity to do something, sort of give people, you know, a look into how, you know, at least in my end of the business, you know, how boards are done. So yeah, and wherever you are in the world, yeah, welcome. This is fantastic. You know, the magic of the internet, as they say.
Awesome. So we do have a couple questions. So before we begin, I wanted to make sure that everyone can see your screen. Louie, did all the options you push OK for, or?
Let's see. I'm seeing the control panel here, and
Okay.
and then I have my.
So can everyone see Louie's screen?
Oh, hold on, see. Oh, here we go. Here we go. Show my screen.
Okay.
Did that work?
Yes, it works.
Okay,
So
good. Yeah, there's this little
they're saying
blinking
yes,
thing
so people can see it now. Just have to make sure.
Nice.
No
Nice.
problem. Awesome. So now that that's resolved, let's go to the first question. Ismail asks, how many panels should a storyboard portfolio have? He asked 12, 24. Like, what's a good number?
You know, um, there's no steadfast rule. It really depends on the story you're telling. You know, ultimately you want it to be, you don't want it to be 100 boards, you know, because people are busy. People who are looking at, you have to keep those people in mind. They're busy people. They usually maybe have 5 minutes to look at somebody's portfolio. So you want it to be really compact. So I would say, you know, if there's a way you could keep it around 30 panels, that's great. Especially if you have more than one sort of sequence to show, that's usually optimum. And then you know, you just make sure that you present it sort of in a side by side. You know, unlike, you know, I'm gonna just bring up the hopefully you can see this. This is the actual project that we did for the workshop, and you see how it's sort of like, you know, in this thumbnail presentation, it's kind of side by side like this. Obviously, you won't, you know, it won't be digital, but it gives at least someone just a big overview, and then they could go into detail. And you know, if you can sort of make it, you know, 4 or 5 in a row, and make it about around 30, maybe 40 boards. Now, you know, that being said, you know, if your story needs 60 boards, then of course do 60 boards. But then you need to know that at the beginning of it, the first 15 boards need to really hook someone looking at it to go, this is really good, this is really interesting. And, you know, that's going to be decided on how well you compose and how well you move your camera, or how well you sort of frame. So yeah, you know, it's hard to just say like, no, it has to be 30 boards, but then, you know, you also don't want to have 30 boards and not be able to show, you know, make your point. In other words, I always tell people, you know, it's all about presentation. So it's the presentation that makes you who you are. So you're going to be different from somebody else. So I've seen boards where literally it's maybe 5 pages, and I'll look at it and I'll either laugh or get a really good, you know, because it's either the way it's drawn or the way it's framed that it hooks me. And I've seen guys give entire books of boards, and I'm just bored to death looking at it. You know, I'm looking at 90, 100 panels, and you know, it's hard. So I guess the answer is keep it compact and make it all about the presentation, how you're going to present it, and make sure that it's clear. It reads clearly. So
Awesome.
hopefully that. Yeah, I mean, I'm like, that's the most non-committal answer, but it's really true. So.
Well, yeah, it makes sense as well. I mean, I think it would depend, again, on what you're trying to convey in those panels, you know, a particular sequence or idea or what have you. So.
Yeah, yeah. If as long as it's a complete idea, you know, you can pitch it. Like, let's say you're in a situation where because it could be a situation where you handed a portfolio and you're not there to walk them through it, which is going to be, I would say, at least half the time you're sending a portfolio over. It has to catch somebody's attention. It has to have something in it that's going to go, oh, wait a minute, what about this? Because it does happen. I'll go through 10 portfolios, and one guy's portfolio suddenly goes, this is a great presentation. I'm seeing the guy's, almost seeing his personality come out through it, and in just the way they presented it, the way they packaged it, the way, and more importantly, I mean, obviously, it's all bells and whistles, but also the work is good, and there's really good storytelling panels in there, and really good acting. You know, I'm really feeling, you know, and when I was at CTN in November, and that's here in LA, it's an animation sort of conference, and I saw a lot of really good portfolios where just guys that knew how to present it, and so it does happen, you know. So yeah, keep it. You know, keep the ideas simple and readable, and you know, because you're not going to be there sometimes to walk people through it.
Right. Perfect. Thank you, sir. The next question we have also from Ismail is, when conducting film studies, what key things should one be looking for?
That's a really good question. You know, whenever I watch, I'm always you want to you want to watch a movie. I usually you do a first pass. You watch it for the entertainment value of it. You know, you're just an audience member. You're not Mr. Filmmaker, and that way you get sort of the benefit of what they wanted you to feel. You know, and then you can ask yourself those questions. Did it come across? And then, you know, and then you might be able to go back later and watch that piece of work again, that film, and then watch it for the nuts and bolts. You know, the things you should be looking out for is how they cut, and when they cut, and editing. You know, boarding is editing. While you're boarding it, you know, you're not a live action camera where you're gonna like shoot, you know, 25 feet of footage only to use 5 feet of it. So boarding is, you have to know where you're going to start, where you're going to end, and you're also going to have to know when you're going to cut away from something. So I'm sure people have heard this. You turn the sound down on something, as simple as TV shows even, especially with TV shows, because there's a lot of locked down camera, 3 camera setup, where they're in a room. And that's a really good basic way of just looking at, turn the sound down, see if you can figure out what's going on in sort of the broad, sense of it, and see when they cut to a wide shot, when they cut to a close-up. When two people are talking, when is it so redundant to cut from head to head? When do you do a wide shot? Some people, there's something that's called cutting on action, where somebody is walking, you hear somebody off screen come in, and they turn, and as their heads turn to that direction, you're cutting to the door as the guy walks in. There are things like cutting on action when someone is changing direction, and then in the wide shot you're already tracking them going that direction, and it's called leading the eye. You're leading the audience's eye to look where you want them. So, and it's rather a special piece of responsibility that you have as a filmmaker, because you decide what the audience sees. So that's a big responsibility, and so those are the things that I love watching that stuff. Like recently with like the Social Network. That's a great movie to watch because it's a lot of people just talking, but it's done so well and done so effortlessly almost, and I'm sure a lot of thought was put into it, especially in the editing. But you're looking at that and you're going, why is this happening so flawlessly? I'm not feeling any jumps or anything like that. And you look for the cutting, and you look for framing. You look for composition. That's what you should be looking out for. And then when in terms of artistically, you're looking at acting. You're looking at little nuances of and then story. Because it's like you're watching it for technical reasons, and you're also watching it for storytelling. Is the story coming across? Am I feeling what the filmmaker is intending me to feel at this point? Am I not feeling it? Why am I not feeling it? And you may not have all the answers, but it's great to kind of know, because it informs your own work. Because now like, okay, well, I really want to be clear. This is how I would do it. You may or may not be right, but at least you understand that that's something that you have to shoot for. So, okay. Yeah.
Well, I would ask as a follow-up question to what you just said then, when it concerns reference and basically developing, I guess, the eye or ability to make those kind of judgment calls, do you recommend individuals, let's say, watch lots of movies and see how they compose a particular sequence, or like what would you do to develop that particular ability?
Absolutely. I mean, that's just exactly what you said. Anything, whether it's animation, live action, TV, look at all that stuff. That's all good information. Books, comic books even, and I'll make this distinction. Comic books only for maybe there's a way that a frame is composed. Because comics is a static art, so don't use comics for filmmaking. Like you're oh, I'm going to learn really good filmmaking from comics. No, there's a lot of comic artists. They would draw really well. They have sort of a cinematic sense, so you could pick up some things from there. But yeah, definitely. I'm to a point now where it's I'm watching the movie, and I'm watching it. Half my brain's on the story, and half my brain's on, okay, how'd they do that? Why did they do that? And then it's not until later then I'll make a little analysis in my head, like, wow, that was really interesting. And the more you train yourself to do that, yeah, it's like anything, the more you do it, the more intuitive you become. So definitely, even if you're, I'll have the TV with no sound if I'm drawing, and once in a while I'll take a break, I'll look up and then just see how they're doing it. And then I could say, like, wow, that's really crummy
right.
or boring. And then sometimes something will catch my eye and go like, wow, that's pretty good, And you never know. You file all these things in your head, and one of these days it'll inform something that you're doing specifically that, oh, this feels like you know, a scene I saw somewhere. I may not be able to put my finger on it, but you know, at least it's not something that you're just gonna kind of make up, and you know, it doesn't have any kind of real information behind it. So yeah.
Awesome. And again, everyone who's in attendance, I see you guys there. You can ask questions. Don't be afraid. He's here to answer any questions you may have.
Yeah, man. Lay it on me.
And while we wait
Beat me up.
yeah, I see the attendees here, just they're not saying anything. But
Yeah.
but anyway, I have a few questions I'll ask you that I've been generally compiling from other workshops and what have you. So
Nice.
in that sense, give me a second. Let me actually dig them up here. But I'm just going to ask, like, in general, like, what project are you working on right now, if you don't mind me asking?
Let's see.
Or what can you talk about that you're working on?
I think they announced it already. I think you know, if it appears in the Variety, I think I can talk about it now, right?
Right. I think that's pretty safe.
I think that's pretty safe. But I'm working on. I'm over at DreamWorks Animation, and I did finish. By the way, don't forget to watch Kung Fu Panda 2. I worked on that for 2 years, so it looks amazing.
Yes, it does. I saw the last cut.
And you saw it too.
Yes.
And now I am on, and I did work on Megamind. And now I'm working on this new film, which I don't know whether this is going to be, you know, what the title is.
I have like a working title now.
I don't know. They're calling it Rise of the Guardians, and which just sounds amazing. But then, you know, there's the Owl movie that's called The Guardians of Ga'Hoole, and every time I tell someone, "What are you working on?" I'm working on this movie called The Guardians, and they go, "Oh yeah, you know, the Owl movie." So I said, "No, not that." You know, I mean, I you know. That's actually not a bad movie, but no, there are no owls in this movie. So, it's a movie about it's a fantasy action adventure. You know, it's really something of a departure for DreamWorks, and I think it's going to be great. Great cast. You know, I think they announced the cast, didn't they? Chris Pine.
Yes.
Captain Kirk from Star Trek, the reboot. Great actor. And then we have Alec Baldwin, who's great in this. I mean, he's all over the place. You hear him everywhere, but he's actually really good in this. So.
Right.
And then who else is in it? Oh, Isla Fisher is in it, and Hugh Jackman, who sounds great. And it, you know. I don't know. I guess I won't say anything about the plot. I know they already talked about what it was, but you know.
Yeah, just to be safe, don't.
You know, so that's 2012.
Awesome.
Yeah, we're jamming on that right now, man.
I know it's a really short turnaround. If you think about it.
Yeah, no, it's so that's why we're working pretty hard, you know, on that one. But it's coming together, you know, and this is one of those situations where, you know, you sometimes you kind of see a cast and you go like, how does that work? And this casting is really good. I mean, I have to say, there's no one guy that sort of, you know, sticks out like a sore thumb. And you go, what's that guy doing in this movie? But you know, and it's been sort of an honor also to work with Guillermo del Toro.
Oh yes.
On this one. You know, he's a creative force, and to be able to work with someone like that, who's always pumped.
Yes, you know, very just outgoing and extremely funny. I think he makes me laugh every time.
He's like, you know, he takes it seriously, but he doesn't. You know, you could tell. You know, and he's passionate. He's passionate about, you know, he goes in there and really wants it to work, and he's like passionately, like, you know, like egging you on. You go like, no, this could, you know, this could be bigger, this could be this and that, you know, so no, I mean, that's just one of the great sort of pleasures of working at a really, you know, world-class studio.
Yeah, you
Like
get to meet
DreamWorks.
wonderful people like that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, you get to work with fantastic talent like Ted here. And I mean that. I mean, it, you know, you
I
walk around, there and you see all the world-class talent, man. How can you not be inspired?
Wow. Well, thank you for that selfless plug there.
Oh, no kidding.
But moving on, actually, I had a question that Ismail followed up with was, and I
Nice.
think you kind of, in a way, answered this, but I
Hmm.
wanted to know how much time are you given to board a sequence in features and in television?
Let's see. Okay. Timetables are, you know, they're kind of similar. You know, in television, the way it works is, you know, it's TV is seasonal work, and by that, you know, a show is given basically 6 to 8 months to make, you know, 20 or so some episodes, 20 or so half hours, and so as a storyboard artist, you're given within that time, you know, you're basically given within the 6 months or 8 months of that. Storyboarding in there will probably be, half that time, well, you know, close to about 6 months. Anyway, you're given anywhere from 4 to 6 weeks to turn around a storyboard. So at every 4 or every 5 weeks or so, you're going to turn in a storyboard, and then you're going to get another script, and you're going to start the process all over again. And then depending on how big your crew is, you know, you might do that, 3 times. So, and then you're done. So, the process is rather cut and dry. You're given a script, you get a section from that script, you board it, whether it's half an act or the whole, shebang, and then you board it. And then if you're still alive at 5 weeks, you turn it in, and then you take the defibrillator, and then you shock yourself back to life, and then you do it again. 1,000 panels later. So it's true. No, I mean the pencil mileage in TV is incredible. So now in features, it varies. Like if you're at the beginning of a project, if you're you just started, you're doing exploratory storyboarding development stuff, you can be given 2 weeks to do one sequence, which, depending on what that is, if you get an action sequence or if you get sort of half and half, there's some talking, some action, or purely talking, it depends on what that sequence is, in which case you're okay, 2 weeks, and you may be putting together maybe 50, 60, 70 boards at that point. And then during those 2 weeks, your filmmaker, your brain trust will probably be checking in with you to see what your progress is, and you might be doing pitches throughout, and then at the end of that 2 weeks, it's a finished sequence that you finally pitch to your crew, so it's manageable. Now compared to TV, yeah, that's a vacation as far as I'm concerned. But when you're in a crunch situation, like I guess I can talk about Dragons because it's done. I know they had to turn around that movie in no time, in which case they're being given sequences to do with literally like 24 to 48 hour turnaround, in which case here's the sequence, we don't even have any writing on it, the sequence is about this, the character's going to do this, and this is what the point of the scene is about, go. So that's when you're working sort of a late night, trying to turn your sequence around so that the next day you could pitch it. It's we're almost there now on Rise of the Guardians.
Actually, yeah, I found that kind of odd at
Yeah.
first when I went to visit you the other day, and I'm like, "You still here?" It's like,
yeah. No, it's because the ideas are going fast and furious. You've got you got the brain thrust. You're doing rewrites on the fly, and then suddenly like we want to cut this in to editorial. So it's a different animal than TV, but it all feels the same. Your brain is being just tested every day. So and your hand's gonna feel like it's about to fall off, but it's fun. It's a fun, frantic, because you're making the movie. At this point, it's fun.
Right.
And you're getting feedback right away. That's the great thing about features, at least in this juncture, is that you can board. You go, I have a great idea. I'm going to board it. And then show it to your director, your head of story, and then they go, wow, this is great. Let's cut this in. And at that point, it might be so rough that you need to work a few extra hours to make it kind of sing a little more before it gets cut in. So, and then the next day you could turn that in, and they could go, here's the old sequence you did. We took it apart in the editorial. Now you get to put it back together with new stuff, and you're going, so it's very random and energetic, and very hectic. So, so as far as time frame's concerned, TV is a little more cut and dried, where features is a little more,
Variable.
you're on, you're on the fly, like wondering what you're going to do today. So, which is great, and certain days you hopefully can fly under the radar, and you might have a few hours to like doodle for yourself. So
Okay.
thankfully that happens. That does happen. So it's not a constant siege of deadlines. So.
Right. Awesome. Okay, our next question. By the way, Ismail says, much thanks to Louie and us at CGMW for the workshops. And we thank you, Ismail, for
Thank you, Ismail.
participating.
Man. So, it's all about you, man.
We have a two-part question from Gabe.
Nice.
He basically would like to know, would you recommend a particular line of study for school that will be beneficial to developing the type of film knowledge required for doing story? And then the second part is, how much of real-life experience do you draw from when coming up with your ideas?
All right. As far as schooling, I'll take the first question first. It's tough because, I started in design, so I just like to, everyone, it starts out you like to draw, so I think I developed the drawing part of it first, and said I like to draw, so I'm going to do that. And luckily for me, I got a job as a designer, 16 odd years ago, and I started doing that, so it was fine. So, and then the filmmaking part of it was really just me on the side going like, I really want to know more about filmmaking. And at the time, like, this was, let's see, I did design 5 years. So it's like 12 years ago, I just, I did books, and at the time there really was no internet, so I did books, I did classes, wherever I can find them. A lot of them were duds, so-called filmmaking classes, and it's just a guy, frustrated director who wants to kind of yell at you, and because they never made a film in their lives. So, so, it's easy to just go, well, you can just go to film school, but then film school is a commitment, then you're not drawing, you're in film school. So, I think there could be a medium, at least for my experience, where, because you need to be able to draw well enough to board. So that's the one thing. In live action, you can board and get away with sort of just, the basics of drawing. I mean, a lot of live action guys draw really well, but some just get by with, they're pretty good at drawing, but they, it's okay in live action. In animation, obviously, because you still have to incorporate the animation side of it, that's really what's tough about boards. So, take care of the drawing, and then on the side, there are things that you can do, like, attend seminars and things like that, screenwriting, even though you're not, because you're going to be writing as well, and it's good for you anyway to sort of stretch that muscle, the writing muscle, because you will get in a situation in features where, you get, like I said, you get thrown an outline. It's not even an outline. It's like the director just tells you, dude, they're going to fight here, and go. And you do a fight sequence. Or you do, we need a breakup sequence here between these two people, and this is kind of like the tone, and so you go, oh, okay. So you have to write that. So there are things out there, there are books that you can learn from, and you know, there's, I think now, that at least now on the internet, places where you could look at storyboards and then just, you know, hopefully there's more people like me that sort of like to talk to people who are up and coming, you know, and just tap that resource. But as far as like a straight out like schooling, I don't know. I'm not really sure. There could be. I'm just not familiar with that path. So,
well,
you know,
hopefully, you know,
yeah,
something that we will potentially be offering with our, you know, master classes going forward are things that individuals could basically use to help strengthen their skill set and develop the
absolutely. I
experience they
think
need
that,
anyway.
like I said, that's why this is such a fantastic opportunity, because I know for a fact, just from my own research, that there's, you know, not a lot of resource directly when it comes to, you know, straight out information about,
You know,
you know,
storyboarding.
professional storyboarding is concerned.
Right.
So, and then as far as part two of your question is concerned, which is
How much real
how
life
much real
experience?
life experience, a lot. In fact, that's all you rely on. Is it starts with like brainstorming with your crew. You know, you're going in there trying to figure out, trying to find something real or something really primal or basic about what your character is going to do, what your character is about, and the only real sort of primal and basic things you could really draw from is what you've experienced in life. So, yeah, I mean, it's all about that. It's, you know, and it's that's the tough part, because you really want to separate what you're about from the stuff you've seen in films, because it's easy enough to go like, oh, that feels like a scene from Casablanca, which could be 200 other movies, obviously. But there's a truism in all those movies, obviously, that happens, and then it's easy to just get lost and go like, well, that's okay, that's what we want. But then you have to sort of break it down to what you've experienced and go, okay, why is it true? And why would an audience go in there, look at it, and feel something? You go like, you know what, I really identify with that. And usually it's because it's a truism of something that's happened to you. It's what happens to you, you know, I mean, aside from if you're really into really unique stuff, most of, you know, 99% of what happens to you happens to somebody else. So the uniqueness comes from you, your experience, and what, you know, and how are you going to turn that around and then apply it to what you're working on without it sounding like, well, you know, without it sounding rather, you know, self-serving. So,
Right.
you know, that's really where, like, if you're writing anyway, you know, I've started to really like, I have a book. It's a sketchbook, which I have drawings in there, but it's just I'm encapsulating like moments in my life that for some reason keep coming back to me. Why is this one moment affected me so much? It could be the most mundane thing, you know, but why did that affect me? So I write that down just so that I could sort of form an idea around it and sort of interpret it. Why? So that later on it's clear to me, and if I have to use that, pull from that, you know, it's not something that, you know, I'm just, again, it's more of a reminder of another idea rather than coming from yourself. So
Right.
hopefully you know,
Yes, he
that
actually
makes
says,
sense.
cool, good info. So Gabe, I think, liked your answer. And actually, we have, let's see, 5 more
Oh,
questions
nice.
to go. So let's see if we can speed through these.
Let's, all right,
And since we're approaching our cutoff time, but I'll go a little bit over if we have to, so don't worry.
all right, hey, let's bang
Uh,
through it.
so the first one is from Dominic, who asks, just wondering what resolution your storyboard templates are. Presumably you have to print them out at some time.
You know what? I'm going to double check these while we're here. And I think yeah, they're actual size. So like the resolution you're seeing here is 100 pixels per inch, and that's good enough. They're 9.6 by 7, 9.6 by 7 width times height, and that's good enough, because if you're going to print it, you're not going to basically print this larger than that. So, and the reason why it's 100 pixels per inch is it's a little broken up. You kind of like to have a little sort of rather organic look to it. So you could certainly do it at 300 dots per inch, but then you're going to end up with a gigantic file, and it's also a size issue. You don't want 21 meg files, especially if you end up with 100 of them. Then your hard drive's toast. So it's a size issue. Make it however you board it, as long as it's in the right aspect ratio. Make it manageable for what you're doing. If you know that you're going to print it, like this, for instance, this size, if I print this, I should print it smaller even, because you don't have enough space, and you want to be able to show them side by side, if in case you print it out and cut it out and put it side by side. For digital, it doesn't really matter, because you've got bridge, and it doesn't matter at that point. So, but think of 100 for me. That's just a good manageable way, because then you're ending up with around, I think, 900K, 970K per panel, which is fine. Any more than that, even a meg is fine. 1.5 is fine. But then when you end up with, boards they're meant to be tossed. You should see the amount of storyboards we toss. At least it's digital. we don't have to kill trees, but so. But at the same time, you're like, you can't be you can't be too precious about these panels, because they're just panels. So
Makes sense.
I hope that, yeah. So
I think it does. Okay, we're going to move to the next question from John. John wants to know, if you're not working from provided model sheets, do you have a preferred style to your drawings? Do you change the style depending on whether it is a project for kids or adults?
Yes. I mean, you're hopefully you are going to be in a situation where, as far as drawing is concerned, that you're in a situation where you can tweak your drawing style just a bit. Now, I mean, personally, I like, this happens more in television. In television, they actually have to tell you to draw a certain way, because you have a model sheet, you have, a model pack with backgrounds and layouts and character designs, because of layout, overseas layout, and animation. Things have to look uniform. Now, in boards, I'm sorry, in feature boards, you're not really concerned about that so much. Actually, they encourage that people kind of draw their own way. It's kind of like a style thing. But at the same time, there's like a zone that at some point everybody goes into that zone where everything kind of looks the same. And if you're given a scene where all you have to go with is like two characters, and you go, oh, they're in the whatever, they walk through the city. And you go, well, where's the city? Oh, it's the city we haven't designed. But it's in that world. Like in Kung Fu Panda, we're in situations where they're traveling, let's just say, or they're going to another place. You go, oh, well, it kind of looks like, let's just say it kind of looks like a temple. But then you've already have all these other designs and the design motif of the movie, so you kind of just adjust your drawings accordingly. So you know, you don't want to suddenly draw like, you know, pyramids, you know, as long as it's not that drastic. So yeah, you do have to be good enough to be able to do little adjustments like that. And then especially again with secondary characters, sometimes they'll go, oh, this character's going to interact with the man on the street. And you go, oh, who's this man on the street? Oh, it's just some guy. All right, so you don't want to you know, suddenly just draw some guy that doesn't belong in that world. It has to sort of stylistically at least belong in that realm, you know. It's not that anyone's going to kill you at that point. It's a board, you know. So it's not a big deal, but it is nice to be able to do that. So
Awesome. The next question we have is from Dominic. He was just wondering, let me see here, make sure I haven't asked this already. I was wondering how many panels you reckon you draw in a day. I know it's like asking how long is a piece of string. I occasionally storyboard for live action stuff, and that is always the first question I'm asked. I don't have any frame of reference, basically.
So you're asked like how many boards you can do in a day. That might be a live action thing. I'm not familiar with it. I've done live action boards before, but I certainly wasn't asked like, okay, well, you know, how many boards will this be? Because like I said, I don't know. You know, it's hard to say. So, you know, I've run the gamut of, you know, I did an action sequence on Kung Fu Panda that was 375 panels. And then the most I've done in one day, you know, where we were literally like, we need this done. I think I did like, I did 125, 130 panels one day. And I mean, obviously that's a long day. I was boarding from, you know, early in the morning until late in the evening. And so, and then average, I would say I do about 30, 35 panels a day. It really all depends on what it is you're working on. So it's hard to quantify it into like how many. And believe me, this is something that even production will ask, you know, like, well, how many panels is that? You know, because they want to know like when you're going to be done, and you know, and you're trying to go like, I think it'll be 60 panels, but then suddenly 125 panels later, it's not. So I don't know. I don't really, you know what? And to be honest, I don't really think about it as far as how many panels it's going to be. To me, it takes as long as it takes. You know, because I've done sort of lockdown camera scenes, and they're as many panels as an action scene because of the scene. Not every scene's the same, you know. So maybe because there's a lot of cutting around, and there's a lot of, you know, characters that walk, and you have to do tracking shots of the character walking or whatever within a room, and they sit down, they stand up, and things like that. Those take time because you're moving the camera, in which case it multiplies your, you know, multiplies panels. So so no, there's really no, you know, in TV, I think one day, there was one day I stayed up all night. It was 24 hours. I drew for 24 hours on one show, and I think I did about 250 panels. And I mean, obviously some of them were just kind of rough panels, but I mean, I was dead at the end of it. Hopefully I never get to do that again.
In that situation then, if you were, let's say you happen to be going for a job in some unknown time, and they ask you that question, then you wouldn't necessarily give them an answer. You just say however many it takes, basically.
Yeah, you know, the best answer you could say, if you really, I mean, sometimes you will know. Okay, I will say this: if it's just literally like, okay, you know, this scene where it stops here, I need to extend it so that there's this last bit. So in which case, you know, 80% of the scene's already done. You're only doing 20% of it. Then you know exactly what that takes. Oh, it's just that. Oh, I can probably do that in 30 panels. Oh, okay, so what do you think? 30 panels? If it's 30 panels, then it's basically a day. maybe a day, you know. So you get better at estimating that. I mean, I'm usually right, but once in a great while, I'll say something where I go, yeah, you know, I'll have it done by the end of the day. And then they'll check in with me at any end of the day, and I go, shaking my head, I go like, you know what, it's a lot more work than I thought. So, you know, that's hopefully that keeps going, because you know that at least the filmmaking process is a fluid thing, and it's not a cookie cutter, you know,
Right.
where everything's gonna be so homogenized, and you know, so yeah, there's no steadfast like real average. So
Awesome.
yeah.
Okay. The next question is also from Dominic. Is in live action storyboards, the storyboard artist is almost a pencil for hire. In animation, you seem to be almost directing the sequence. How does that work if you are working with someone like Guillermo del Toro?
Well, you know what? I think it's more of an adjustment for him, because he was, you know, and he's a very smart guy, and it's not like this is not the first time he's worked in animation. I think, well, at least he's worked in games. I know he's working in games with other companies, so I think he understands the differences. Like, he understands that things have to be drawn. You know, like you can't, you know, it's not a situation where like take a camera over here and shoot the actor. So that's more of an adjustment for him. And I'm just, you know, speculating, obviously, because it's not been a situation where suddenly he goes like, okay, well, you know, here's the new idea, and suddenly, you know, let's have it right now. Of course not. I mean, he knows what the you know, what animation's about. So it hasn't been, you know, it hasn't been an adjustment on our end. It's more of him adjusting to us, I think. So that hasn't been an issue. So
Actually, I think it's a wonderful distinction to make, you know, because, again, he is coming from a film background more so than we are on a day-to-day pace, I guess. So he has
yes.
to, I guess, reconfigure how he would approach a given situation just because it's an extra step or two just to get to his particular final product or
Oh, sure, sure. No, I
or
mean,
look.
everyone who's, you know, I'm sure, even in the first time James Cameron had to work and do CG, I'm sure he had to adjust, and same thing with guys like, you know, a guy like Wes Anderson, you know, who's never done animation, and he does Fantastic Mr. Fox. Even he completely relied on his filmmakers, I mean, at least on his animators, I mean, to tell him, like, you know, because he would go like, how long does that take? Oh, well, it takes this much time. And he goes, oh, okay, you know, so because he doesn't know, you know, and he's used, again, to writing a script in a room and going somewhere, going to a location the next day and putting the camera on, the actors show up, you shoot the scene, and it's done. So that's more of an adjustment for him, and he admits it. So, you know, yeah, it's not, yeah, let them figure it out. You just do
Awesome.
what you're doing.
Cool. So let me see. Actually, Dominic has another question, but before I ask that one, I want to ask someone else who hasn't had a chance
The
here.
Dominator.
Yeah.
Dom.
Is Emily? Emily asks. She says, "Hi, Louie.
Hello.
Thanks for your time. How much does a storyboard artist in animation need to be an animator? Is it possible to be a board artist and not an animator?"
This is a great question. This is a great question. I'm glad you asked this question, because and you're not the first person to ask this question. I get this all the time. You know, it would, in a perfect world, it would be awesome to be able to be an animator. And I know people. We work with people who segue from animation to boards all the time. They would work as animators, and then when they have some downtime with the company, they go, I want to do boards, so then they go to story for some months until animation starts up again on another production. And it certainly helps, you know, but is it something to where you have to know how to animate to board? No. And I'm the, you know, I guess the poster child for that, because I went to art school, but I didn't go to animation school. I had no formal animation training. So what I did on the side, because I wanted to know, when we were making reels, when we were making animatics for television, what makes really good animatics, and especially when I became a director, I really wanted to know how that reel was going to be the best that it can be, and not only that, forget the reel even, because the reel is just a presentation tool. The board itself, because the board's going to be used as a template for layout and animation overseas. You know, people that you're never going to meet are going to animate this. So how is this? What information do I have to put in my storyboards that's going to sell in the action part of it, as far as animation is concerned? What does it take so that they're not guessing overseas what you want? Because it's a situation where if you don't put it on your storyboard, it doesn't get done. I mean, you can dream about it and go like, I think it's going to be beautiful when they do this. Well, if you don't put it on the board, it's never going to get done. So, you know, I went and self-studied as much as I can with people that I know, people that I worked with, and, you know, I did little animations myself. I actually went and got, you know, an animation disc and did, you know, there was luckily at the time the studio I was working at, we had a few animators from Europe who were really good, and I showed them my work, and they were sort of giving me, you know, like little pointers of like, okay, this is good. And it's not because I was going to be an animator, it's just so that I understood how to break down action, so that if I did a walk cycle on a board, that it made sense. You know, I knew the difference between an in-between and a breakdown, you know. And then the other eye-opener for me was I had the chance to attend this weekend seminar with Richard Williams, who at the time everything in the Animator's Handbook. If you guys know that book, fabulous book. That's an important resource as far as I'm concerned. Own that book and study it, because that if you never go to animation school, that is your animation school. So for those 3 days, that was my animation school. And I picked his brain, and it was great. And I got to a level where I knew that what I knew was good enough so that if I had to call out animation, I knew what I was talking about. I knew what in-betweens were. I knew what breakdowns were. I knew how to time it. I knew the spacing, you know. And I talked about it in the workshop about timing and spacing. It's all about that. That's really all animation is. So know it to the point where it makes your work in boards better, but it's certainly not going to be a situation where I'm going to go to 4 years of animation school and then I'm going to board. That's fine if you have the time, but you know, it's not going to be, it's not going to work for everybody. I can also say that I've worked with, and I'm not disparaging these people. I've worked with assistant animators and animators from Disney and Warner Brothers, and I was a director at the time, and they came in as touted animators, and they, at the time, because work was either slowing down at the big studios, they needed work, so I hired those guys as board artists, and they would board for me, and they didn't know how to board. You know, they even couldn't translate their animation to storyboards. Like, if they were going to do an acting bit, and I asked specifically, I need an acting bit here where this character does this, you know, like you've done in movies. And they somehow could not cross that bridge. And for no fault of their own. I mean, it's just one of those things where they've never gone that far. So if you could find a way where it's a whole nice happy medium of draftsmanship, filmmaking, film knowledge, and animation, you're gonna be working for a long time, because it's hard to make those things all pair together, and it's a challenge. But when it does, it's great. It's a great place. It's a great zone to be in. So yes, it does help, but only to the extent where it's going to make your understanding of animation better as it pertains to your storyboarding. So there you go.
That was very insightful, actually. Thank you,
Well,
Louis.
thanks.
Actually, I learned a few things there too. So,
Yeah.
um, so what we're
I
going to
did
do
too.
now? Well, that's awesome. Full circle there. Now, our next question is from Dominic that I jumped over before.
Dom.
And basically, this is a more technical question, I guess, related to
Mm-hmm.
Photoshop. So he wants to
Yes.
know, can you explain the background fill pen you used in the workshop, please? I
Ah,
couldn't find it in
let's
the
see.
Photoshop help unless I was looking in the wrong place. I don't
All
know
right, here we go.
what the
Here we
official
go.
name
So
of it
let's say,
is.
all right, let's say, okay, here we go. You know, yeah, character. You're drawing it in one layer, right, Mr. Block of Woodman? Oh, you're just doing this really fast. All right, and then let's do a, let's do a background layer. Let's just say he's standing right next to this wall. Angle, little details like this, and then the little slats. So if you just make sure that your background layer is behind, so I'm going to move the background layer behind the character. So there's your character. So all you need to do is convert your brush. So I'll just make it big like this, and then go up here to mode, okay? And you see this thing that says behind? You just click that, and then, oops, hold on here. I have to make sure you have white selected on here on your palette down here. Just make sure that white's selected. Or sometimes you'll want to use another color, but usually it's white because you want it to look. So if you decide that you're going to put a little shading in behind that for your background just to make it pop. Let's just say you're going to put so obviously we didn't fill them in completely. So we'll go back here. In my case, I've already put that. I already created a pen, and all you need to do is just save that as a brush, and then suddenly there. And then the great thing about that is he's always going to be in a separate layer, so that if you suddenly have to walk him to the next panel, so you just save that as another panel, and you have two panels of him walking out. So the magic of Photoshop. If this were hand drawn, we would actually have to go get a copier and cut him out, paste him there, put Scotch tape on him. Pain in the frickin' butt, and thank God for digital. That's all I could say. So yeah, it's just literally any brush that you select, just hit in your mode, just hit behind, and then if I were you, if you're going to do a little tool preset palette, just save that as I call it underfill, So just to be straightforward. Cool.
Okay. Awesome. And we have a few minutes left here, actually about 2. So
Nice.
I don't see any more questions popping up. If there are any questions you guys have, we have time for, I think, 1 or 2 more. If not,
Yeah.
we may be wrapping it up a minute or so early.
Oh man, lay it on me. Lay it on me. This
I have a question I ask. Do you
go.
utilize any 3D packages for storyboarding at all, ever, or are you just strictly 2D?
In terms of
Composition or
uh,
development of a sequence or something like, do you ever think you need to go into a 3D package to, let's say, uh, lay out an environment and then from there?
oh, I see what you're saying. however it works. You know, I mean, if that's something that you can do without it sort of affecting your workflow, you know, like, you know, we're getting to a point now where I know there's some talk about incorporating like After Effects with boards, and some people are using that now at work, and I say great, anything, it's all good as long as you don't miss your deadline. It's because I was fiddling around with 3D and all this wonderful stuff, and I go, well, it's great, but it's also about getting the board done. And that's some, you know, 3D is still something that I'm kind of learning, and I'll, you know, admit to that. I'm sort of a 3D novice, so I'm, you know, hopefully going to get better at that, so that I have a better understanding of how to use that. But in the end, storyboarding is about the filmmaking side of it, and however you get that done is the most important thing. For me right now, it's just pretty straightforward. I'd rather actually draw it if I'm looking at environments or things like that, only because I love to draw stuff like that. You know, like we have so much, especially at work, with 3D assets and things like that, that we have like that. We have camera rooms that I can get the exact angle of the shot if I wanted to. But then, you know, you have to think about the compositing time, the importing of the asset to your workflow, and you have to ask yourself, is it faster if I just draw it? And usually, right now, at least for right now, I'm not saying that's not going to change, that I can draw it faster than I can walk to a camera room, get it uploaded, go through the red tape of, because it's a different department, and by the time you get it, I could have drawn it, it could have been done, I could have moved on. So, like I said, plus I love to draw. So, I love drawing environments, so, you know, hey, it's a bonus.
Awesome. And we do have one last question, and this will be it. And we're only going to be a couple minutes over. So it's from Ismail. So he asked, do you use Adobe Bridge the same way in the studio as you did in the workshop?
I'm going to let you in on a little secret. Yes. It's, you know, we use Bridge to the extent of, it's really for us, just the individual story guys, to be able to just manage the panels, you know. How you present it, the director and the story supervisor could care less. For instance, in the studio, as you know, Ted, we use Windows, and sometimes we just use Windows view as a slideshow to pitch our boards if they're JPEGs or they're light enough to pitch. But yeah, a lot of us use Bridge only because it already works with Photoshop. It's not really the intended use of Bridge, but it works. It's good enough. So what you've seen here is, you know, exactly how I would use it at work. You know, so it's, you know, out of the box. You know, we don't do anything special to it. I know at Pixar they have their own little suite that they've created called Pitch Doctor. But, you know, and by the way, when that thing blurs, that's just because my computer is old. It's choking. So at work that never happens because we have better systems. But yeah, that's what's great about Bridge if you're going to board with Photoshop, because it already comes with it. You might as well just use it. You could use, I've done it before where I've used Sketchbook Pro with Bridge, and it works as well. The only thing is, you know, you're having to jump from those two programs just a little, you know, more time consuming than jumping from Bridge to Photoshop, because you could literally just, you know, do this, which is Command Option O and Max, you know, it's toggled between the two of them so easily, and, you know, so why make it complicated? Okay. So yes, get Bridge, CS5. I don't have. I don't have it yet, but I hear it's good.
Awesome. Well, that's a great product promotion there for Adobe.
Man, yeah, where's my free stuff?
We're working on it. We're working on it.
Yeah.
So, well, with that being said, everyone, well, Ismail says many thanks. And actually, I wanted to extend thanks in general to every one of our attendees today that participated in the live Q&A, and for those who actually were watching. To Louie, an amazing thank you as well, because again, this was time from your weekend that you gave to us for this, and we appreciate it a great deal.
Such a pleasure. Pleasure to do.
And yes, you have Gabe. Everyone is here saying thanks, and they really appreciate the workshop, and they loved it. So again, thank you so much for your time and for a wonderful workshop, and just
thanks everyone.
Your insights. I think this. I'm sorry, go on.
I was just going to say, I do, to the extent that I can, you can reach me on Twitter. A lot of people, you guys already, got in contact with me there. And then you could just send me a message if you have any questions, and I answer everything. It may not be instantaneous, but I will answer questions. Email or whatever, however you can get in touch with me. It's my pleasure to help you guys out. So
well, you all heard that, guys and girls, so please take advantage of that opportunity. For those of you who are still interested, we do have other workshops available for purchase, so take a look at the ones from previous sessions, and and take it from there. Beyond that, again, thank you all for showing up, and Louie for your time. And this concludes today's live Q&A. Have a great weekend, everyone. Bye.
Bye.